Okay, I think we should start. Thank you all for coming. I was just saying we had 77 people registered, but here we are. And happy Women's Day. So, and I realized that this is a very early session. So, as you know, it's the roll of the die, right? Okay, so our panel is called Current and Emergent Technologies, Enhancing Gender Equality or Exacerbating Authoritarian Abuse. My name is Marlyn Tadros, and I am a an Egyptian human rights defender and a professor at Southern New Hampshire University. I also have a podcast and a video cast entitled Cairo in Exile, if anybody would like to check it out. I have my two colleagues whom I will introduce at length immediately after my talk. My talk will be the general overview, and then my colleagues are going to go more in depth, and they will share personal stories as well. And I must say, I am very, very honored to have them both here. So in terms of technology, now I am specifying technology, and I think we all are. We're specifying technology that has to do with the internet, because technology is a very, very broad term. So we could go into many emergent technologies and current technologies that are not really our issue today. But has it empowered women? Of course it has. Internet technologies, social media, all of that, all around the world, it has empowered women. Nobody can deny that. And not only women, it has empowered human rights defenders. And I think my colleague Solafa is going to talk a lot more about that. However, we do need to be mindful of who has access to internet and to technologies before we say in a general way, how has it empowered women? Who has access and who was really empowered? So how many around the world actually have access? Are we talking about the women in villages who don't know anything about the internet? They're alienated, and there is a digital divide gap that is growing between those who know how to use the internet and those who don't. And it's a very serious gap because they are being left behind. So to me, it's a sort of two-pronged issue here. The first is the alienation, and the second is the abuse. So yes, we have been empowered by it, but there is also the issue of authoritarian governments, as well as non-authoritarian governments who are abusing the use of technologies. And I would like to speak a little bit about that. So now, the way technology was built, I will talk about the abuse a little bit. The way the technology was built, we see algorithmic bias. So for example, something like Siri or Alexa, or they all have female names, right? Because they are service AI, right? Whereas it has been seen that when you do something that is technical, it should have a more male voice with more authority. But if you're doing something more service-like, then it has to be a female name. Now, this has changed a little bit. There was a report, a UN report that came out. It was a UNESCO report. It's called I'd Blush If I Could, which was actually a reference to somebody who told Siri that you're very beautiful or you're sexy, and somebody else who told Siri you're a slut. And she said, I'd blush if I could. That was Siri's response. And of course, now this changed, right? I have to admit that it has changed, but the mentality, the algorithmic bias is still there. Now, we also see the abuse in those who have an interest in controlling not only the flow of information, but also any kind of access to that information. So remember that before the internet, we used to have a one-way flow of information. Now we don't. Now we all participate in providing information. And this is very empowering to all of us. At the same time, it is being abused because some people are spreading misinformation. In fact, governments themselves are spreading misinformation as well. And sometimes they pretend to be people like us. And they put out information that is not reliable and that is untrue, deliberately. Some people call this phase a techno-dystopia. So we're in a period of techno-dystopia. We're still up in the air. Now, some examples of it, censorship, and I will not talk about censorship because I know my colleagues will. How do we censor how do governments censor the internet and what do they do? But I want to talk in particular about internet surveillance. We've had Finn Fisher, we've had more so Pegasus. And I know probably, how many heard of Pegasus? Yeah, so Pegasus is an Israeli software, and they sold it and they keep selling it to authoritarian regimes. And this has dire impact on human rights defenders. Now, the excuse is always we are fighting terrorism. But these two ladies next to me are considered terrorists by the Egyptian regime, as an example, okay? Because they call them terrorists because they dared post something on the internet. I don't think they look like terrorists, do they? Yeah. So I'm not upset at the, I'm more upset, let me put it this way, I'm more upset at those who enable these regimes to use this, to get the software and to use it. So I'll give you a very ridiculous example. The United Arab Emirates has a program that is called Project Raven. Now, Project Raven is a very big surveillance software based on Pegasus, of course. And guess who is helping them and actually based in the United Arab Emirates and helping the government there? It is US intelligence operatives, and they are top US intelligence operatives. And they are surveilling other governments as well as militants and human rights activists and critics of the regime. And this is a very scary thing. One contract spy from NSA, her name is Lori Stroud. She actually said, she works as a contract, like I said, intelligence operatives. She said in public, in the news, She actually said that it was okay when we were spying on everybody. It was fine. I had no problem with that until they asked us to spy on US citizens. And then she felt bad and she left. Okay, so it's okay to help others spy on their own people, but it's not okay if they're spying on Americans. So she decided, yeah, no, that crossed the line for her. But it doesn't matter that it crossed many lines for us as human rights defenders who are affected by this kind of surveillance. Now, they provide not only the software, they provide the tools, they provide the people, they provide a lot of things. And we need to campaign against this type of work and this type of activity. Now, the UN decided to do something interesting. They created an ad hoc committee on cybercrime, and they are trying to create a convention. I don't know how many of you heard of it, but they are creating a brand new convention, just like the Convention on Women. They're creating one on cybercrime, which on the surface sounds great. And by the way, Russia is the one that, the Russian Federation is the one that suggested it. And let me tell you who is on that committee, who are actually the vice chairs of the committee. Egypt is a vice chair of the committee. Nigeria, China, Japan, Estonia, Russia, Nicaragua, and of course the US, and a few others. But you have some of the most, some of the worst violators who are on this committee. Now, I looked at every one of their documents, right? They're doing this convention, and there are arguments, and there are multi-stakeholders. So we are invited as multi-stakeholders to have our input. And it's minimal input, but we still have input. But I must say that I am very thankful for the European Union, because they have stood time and again, and even the US stood time and again against wording in that convention that would have violated every human rights standard that we have. So yes, cybercrime, there is cybercrime, there is trafficking going on, there is pornography, there is child abuse, there is a lot there is terrorism, indeed. But when I call everybody a terrorist, so we have in Egypt, for example, anybody who posts something on the web that is critical of the government, they say in the judgment against them, in the sentence against them, they say this is because they are terrorists. So the EU, the European Union, as well as the US, said repeatedly, and so did multi-stakeholders, and so did Virtual Activism, which is my organization. We all stood against that, against the double standard. We don't want, see, the standards are there already. The human rights standards are there already to tackle all of these things. We did not need a new convention to tackle it. But they insisted on making a new convention because somebody like Egypt put such wording. I was actually shocked, although I know what the Egyptian government does, but I was actually shocked at some of the wording that they put. So Of course, Egypt's proposal stressed the need for technical support and for the involvement of Interpol in arresting and extraditing those it considers criminals without asking much questions. So don't ask me. I believe that it is that this person violated is a terrorist or violated my country's whatever. Now you have to let Interpol arrest these people. All of us in exile would fall under that because we speak out. Another thing which is very typical of the Egyptian government, they say anybody who spreads strife, sedition, hatred, and racism. How many times have we heard that? We've heard that in the Egyptian context so many times in so many judgments. Another thing that I will talk about very, very quickly is, actually I will not. It's the suppression really of the opposition and human rights defenders online and how they do that. But I know that Samar will do that and so will Solafa. So I will end here and let me introduce my next speaker. So my next speaker is Samar Elhosseiny. She is an Egyptian human rights defender, programs officer of the Egyptian Human Rights Forum, which is co-sponsoring this event. She worked previously as the MENA and Turkey Research Engagement Coordinator in Coalition for Women in Journalism and as Executive Director for Andalus Institute for Tolerance and Anti-Violence Studies, and was a member of Euromed Gender Working Group. She has a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in international law and human rights. And a terrorist, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So,
I'm not that old. It's just I like to keep myself busy. That's why I did all of that. Okay, let's lose the technical part. Okay, you're fine. Okay, good morning, everybody. I know it's too early in the morning, but I will try to keep it short and sweet. Thank you, Marlyn, for inviting us. Thank you for coming. And I think this year's theme for the UN CSW is very interesting, talking about technology and its impact on gender equality and women's rights in general. It's impressive how much technology could now impact our life. And I would quote here Forrest Gump: life is a box of chocolate. Same as technology and internet, I think. Because as an Egyptian, I lived in Egypt till 2017. Then I went to exile. I used internet. I participated in the revolution. The internet was a key motivator and a key tool that we used and was very helpful indeed. But also, I've been harassed on the internet. I have been targeted on the internet personally or throughout my connections and networks. So I think it has the both elements. We cannot have a clear radical position about how the technology is impacting women's rights. But speaking about the Egyptian context in detail, and I think Solafa would be more even in depth in the Egyptian context because she has her own personal experience with first-hand information about how to be targeted online, how to be targeted in jail. But also, yeah, the Egyptian context, it gave us a very good opportunity to speak up. A lot of initiatives to support women, to help them and encourage them to speak about the type of harassment and suppression that they are suffering from the state or even from their own families. The internet gave us this platform. Now there are pages, there are initiatives, there are people speaking up and using the internet as a key tool to communicate with these people, to help them and support them, and even build a bigger solidarity actions. I think that over the last 10 years, there's several campaigns that came on the internet that supported women rights, supported women who were abused, women who suffered from different level of oppression from their key family members, key relatives. And if it wasn't for the internet and social media platforms, nobody would have heard about them. And it also gave us a good platform to debate topics, new topics. The Egyptian society was overwhelmed with the concept of no means no. It was something new for us on the internet and everywhere. So when we started discussing this in the internet, everybody was like, what do you mean? We understand usually that no means that you are playing hard to get. No, no means no. You know that. So it opened the space for even more in-depth topics. It opened a window for shaming perpetrators, reaching out to them, speaking about what they're doing. But also it has the risk because some of the key human rights activists and women defenders got targeted by lawsuits because of speaking up and targeting perpetrators. It helped us also define what the Egyptian law and society is calling the values and principles of the Egyptian society, which is by the Egyptian law, you can actually be put into jail because of defying these principles and values, which are not stated in the law. So it really depends on the prosecutor who will like investigate you, or it will depend on the police officer who will arrest you, or the person who will watch a video and see that maybe you are dancing or speaking about topics that are relevant to the Egyptian society, and then they will put you in jail for it. We have a very famous case called the TikTok girls case. A few young teenagers playing with TikTok like everybody in the world now, and they did some videos dancing and making fun of different issues, and they got put in jail for it. And actually they were about to the Egyptian government wanted to do virginity test for one of them, but she refused. But at the end, the risk was there because they considered her a slut just for doing videos on the internet. So we have this one window for sure. And the last good space for the internet for us would be like highlighting role models and key accomplishments for women who did something good in the Egyptian society or even outside. This is good. The internet from this side is very good. What the technology did for the Iranian women and the solidarity that it created for them, it's marvelous. I think we owe a lot for the technology because of it. But also, and I think Tahrir Institute, you're a fellow, they did a report last year about online violence, cyber violence, and they identified 5 key forms of online violence that women in Egypt are exposed to. First thing is sexual harassment. It's kind of a daily business that you receive an inappropriate message on Facebook or on Twitter or any other platform that has private parts of somebody, or discussing private parts or commenting in a way. They also identified public shaming. If you are wearing, if you have a specific way of wearing clothes, talking lifestyle, you will be publicly shamed. You will not only publicly shamed, sometimes if somebody slaughtered you in the streets, this will be excused because of your lifestyle. We have a very famous case of a girl called Nayira Ashraf. Nayira believed on the idea of no means no. A guy wanted to propose to her. She said no, but the guy insisted, and kept like chasing her everywhere. And at the end, he slaughtered her literally in the street. After 2 days, you can see that on the internet, her photos and her lifestyle were being used on the internet to actually excuse what this person did. There are Facebook groups on the Egyptian internet supporting this guy and saying that she played him and that's why he slaughtered her. We have also a third form of the cyber violence is hate speech. A lot of, especially if you are in the public sphere field, if you are a human rights defender or a women rights defender, or you are in the participating politically on any level, you will be targeted with hate speech about you, how you look, what you do, your lifestyle, everything would be targeted. And they also identified blackmailing using hacking. It's not only Egyptian, it's not only in the Egyptian context, but several human rights defenders, women, their personal data were leaked, their addresses, their photos, and they have been targeted on the internet by these photos. And I know that Egypt, UAE, and KSA and Saudi Arabia, these three countries are kind of leading on the idea of cyber attacks on women human rights defenders. And last thing they identified is non-consensual pornography, which is, I think it's a daily business for everybody. And these were the key forms of cyber violence. One of the things that I think is very significant about the Egyptian context, and also I think the Middle East authoritarian regimes, is the politicalization of cyber attacks on women. How they're using this to limit women participation in public life. How they're using this to undermine the rule, their achievements. If you are traveling alone, doing any kind of business, you're not a good girl, as per the concept in Egypt. A lot of human rights activists, political activists, were targeted online whenever they are adopting any political initiative or participating in a political initiative. What they will face what we call electronic committees or electronic flies even. I think this has been covered in several documentaries, how many countries are paying people to attack human rights and political activists online. Khashoggi's case, by Gamal Khashoggi's case, where and also the documentary that was made about his case, discussed this in detail, how they pay them, the way they work, and sometimes their key target are women because they want to limit your exposure. They don't want you to online. They don't want you even on the field. And about being left out of the technology and empowerment, actually, it was very significant that Khashoggi's case, the way that they actually hacked his phone is through his ex-wife, because she doesn't have the knowledge. She doesn't have experience in technology and how to protect herself. So they sent a link to her phone, and then the link got into her phone. This is how the Pegasus work. It goes to your phone, it takes all your address book, and everybody you are communicating with, they're starting taking the information of them. On another example of actually using the lack of knowledge for women, Mariam Khawaja, she's the daughter of a key Bahraini human rights defender. Mariam, she's a young girl. She lives in UK. Yeah, she has a nice lifestyle. Whenever she goes anywhere, she can find that someone from the government has been sent, and they know her whereabouts because of her social media accounts. They track it and they go after her. And I don't want to go to take a lot of time, and if I'm exceeding my time, just stop me. But in general, I would say that there are two issues in the Egyptian We have the government that is very repressive. It's putting restrictions on women and men, to be honest. But women we are suffering from what we call layers of oppression. We have the oppression of the regime, we have the oppression of the society. We have different layers of oppression. But also even the laws, the legislation, because the Egyptian regime all the time says that we did a lot of accomplishment when it comes to women rights, when it comes to protecting women. But when you look at the legislations, there is still a big gap between what's needed and what happened. There is a law, but there is no unified law for violence against women. Many organizations has proposed this, but nothing has been approved yet. Online violence is already criminalized in something called the cybercrimes law, but this law is not mm, used to protect women, but it's actually used to target
Yeah.
activists. And I think my colleague here is one of the victims. But yeah, it is used widely to target women human rights activists. Last thing away from the regime is the role of social media corporations in actually suppressing women, because social media companies, they don't interact, they don't have a fair policies, fair community guidelines that actually protect women on the spot whenever they are targeted. I used to work for the Coalition for Women in Journalism, and we have reports from journalists who were attacked online. Their photos are leaked, their private life and their life is on stake. And we try to reach out to the social media companies to remove some photos or remove some posts, but the time that they take to respond is very wide when you are talking about a private life on stake. And also the way that they need you to verify the information, even though I am the person, I am reporting, this is my photo, I don't want it on the internet, it has been leaked, but by some guys, it takes weeks maybe to take these photos off. And it is not fair. It's because by the time they take it off, the news is already out. Your life is already damaged. I wouldn't take a lot of time. Thank you so much for hearing. And I think my colleague Solafa.
Thank you. Thank you, Samar, so much for this. I will go right ahead to Solafa Salam or Solafa Magdy. Solafa is a multimedia reporter. She actually worked as a journalist also in Egypt. She is women's human rights defender, honorary citizenship of City of Paris for 2020. She was given the honorary citizenship for courage in journalism. She is Courage in Journalism winner in 2020 also. And I just want to say that she was in prison. She was arrested and she was in prison. How long, Solafa? 2 years? Three? Almost 2 years. She was imprisoned for almost 2 years. And I mean, if it was really bad. I would very much like you to hear her. After she came out, she has faced threats and harassment and detention simply for reporting the truth and holding the powerful to account. So currently, she is Timepiece 9th Bassem Sabri Democracy Fellow. That's in Washington, D.C., where her mandate focuses on women in Egypt's prisons. So without further ado, here is Solafa Magdy.
Thank you, Marlyn, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for your coming. Thank you, Marlyn, for having us. I will try to speak in English, but my English language is not perfect yet. So let's try. But at the first, as I thought that digital space was the only and somewhat safe space to continue the struggle and to raise awareness regarding the rights of women in general and journalists, women and defender, human rights defender. Years ago, these platforms were an opportunity to complete my work in Egypt that I believe in. But I have been imprisoned for nearly 2 years in Egyptian prison because I am only a journalist doing my duty toward my message. Especially in 2017, the waves of blocking of websites or news websites in Egypt began to increase until it reached today about 630 blocked news websites and perhaps more per day. I realized at that time that a way must be found. I worked on personal initiative to transforming my personal accounts like website, like Facebook and Twitter into alternative news platforms using my mobile phone, publishing photos or videos and also using live stream. I worked on publishing reports on violation against working women in Egypt, sexual and verbal abuse of Sudanese refugee women in Egypt, and suppression of women journalists while performing their work, whether in coverage on the field or in their workplace. My idea succeeded, and I worked on documenting all the events on the spot. I used my right to express my opinion and publish my message as a journalist and advocate using digital platforms or social media like Facebook or Twitter. This was before the Egyptian security first shut the mouths of independent media in Egypt, and before women journalists and defenders were prevented and suppressed from working by imprisonment, killing, or harassing us through social media platforms and treating us to stop doing what we are believing in. And the result was that I was accused of spreading panic among citizens and destabilizing security stability in my homeland. And because I was insisting on publishing the facts to be imprisoned in the end. And now I forced to leave my homeland to join the diaspora community abroad. But despite all this, I would like to thank the security Egyptian authorities for giving me this opportunity and to be voice for the voiceless, for those who are still behind bars, my colleagues and my friends, and for those who don't have the safe opportunity to express their pain and abuse them because they are still in Egypt, banned from travel, denied the rights to expression because imprisonment and enforced disappearance are the inevitable fact there. I would like to take advantage of this opportunity that was given to me through Marlyn and through you to thank you all at first and to urge all of you on the need to confront electronic violence against women, journalists, and defenders. We don't only suffer from the repression of the security authority, not only the security who adopts the idea of patriarchal domination, but there are many on social media platforms. We are subjected to abuse every day and every moment, just because we are women, because we are journalists. We can work together by forming periodic committees that closely follow up on the violation of women journalists and the human rights defender. You can listen and meet those who went through experiences like us, who were eyewitness to the abuse of women's rights on the ground and through digital space as well. It's not and will not be enough to publish written reports on the platforms. We must raise awareness of the need to stop silence diplomacy because it's translated by dictatorial governments as a green light for more repression. Thank you, and excuse my weak English.
Thank you, Solafa. I should say that Solafa was actually also unable to see her son for 2 years when she was in prison. So it's quite an interesting story. I'm going to open, if anybody have any questions, please let me know. Go ahead. Hi. Absolutely. Would be delighted. Go ahead.
My name is She. Thank you so much. I think
Right.
because our government is taking I would say back about the condition of how technology will more polarization or attacks online, trolls are everywhere, and all people will get to look at how I hope this will not be shared. I will not be able to get past this. It's us, even though we are a different, but it's just a God, right? And there is nothing democratic about the situation. Last few years, we have seen clamp down, very targeted execution of rights. People languishing our jails with no due process, no bails, very limited hearing, and it doesn't matter whether you're a old person or what conditions, health conditions you have, it just doesn't matter. And everything you said, it just was like I was repeating something that's going back. And it's so heartbreaking that technology not to what us as a humankind, we are seeing it legitimize power struggling. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have any answers, but hopefully we will rise out of this situation as well.
Yeah.
Actually,
Go ahead.
Solafa herself was on a pre-trial detention. She spent 2 years without being. Yeah, she wasn't. It wasn't like a sentence that she was serving. It was a pre-trial detention
2 years.
for 2 years. And right now in Egypt, pre-trial detention is used systematically to target like prisoner of conscience, political activists. You can spend. We have people who are in pre-trial detention for over 4 and 5 years, and now people are like hoping and they are aspiring to get a sentence so they can serve it, finish it, and get out. But now even seeing a judge is a privilege.
Yeah. Absolutely. And even before you were guilty, you're assumed that you're guilty. So you have to prove
Yeah.
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see these clampdowns. They close internet so that people are not educated.
Right.
So there is misinformation because you can't reach out for support or kind of help. And it's scary because our government is supposed to be true. And it's
Right.
really developing well.
I think there's a problem with authoritarianism spreading around the world. It's gaining momentum, and a lot of people are not aware of how much momentum it is gaining, especially because they live in a democracy and they feel they can go and, go and vote and things like that. But if you're voting and you're voting for the wrong people, for the demagogues, for the people who will actually take away your rights, that's not voting. That's not, this is a path towards more authoritarianism. And I think us in the so-called third world, we're very much conscious of this and conscious of the characteristics of authoritarianism. So when we see it at play, it's a little bit disconcerting. So, yeah, go ahead.
I work so like another question.
Yeah, there is, yes. You want to ask also? I think so.
I think we will take few questions and then we will wrap up. So
We still have half an hour. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Samar. Solafa. So, given
Yeah, go ahead.
أنا هجاوب بالعربي عشان
okay, she will answer in Arabic and I will be translating.
I'm sorry. مثلا ايه اللي نقدر نستفيده انا هل في رمق
في regulations.
في السوشيال ميديا ان هي تقدر تساعدنا يعني هي الفرصة ما زالت موجودة من خلال استخدام مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي او السوشيال ميديا دليل ان انا موجودة هنا النهارده الكامبين مش موجودة
But she's saying the opportunity is still there to use social media campaigns and use social media in general to make a change. And the proof for that is that she is here now.
الكامبين اللي تم الاستعانة بيها أو تم عملها للضغط على السلطات المصرية علشان أخرج سجن كانت بتتم من خلال استخدام وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي نجحت بعد فترة طويلة ولكنها نجحت.
Social media platforms were used widely to organize and launch solidarity actions for her case. It took some time for sure, but at the end, it created the level of solidarity that pressured the government to release her.
اللي بحاول أعمله دلوقتي إنه أستمر في استخدام السبل المتاحة لينا اللي هي وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي أو من خلال إيفنتات معلنة زي دي، في إن إحنا نقول إيه اللي بيحصل في السجون والعنف الممنهج ضد السيدات في السجن، علشان نحاول نعمل غطاء حماية ليهم ولو بشكل مؤقت.
Okay. So what she's trying to do right now is using social media platforms and public events like this in order to raise awareness and spread the word about the systematic violence and violations against women, especially women inside jail, in order to create a change, even to create maybe a better living conditions for them in prison.
أو غطاء حماية في تحسين أوضاعهم داخل السجون، تقليل العنف لحين إطلاق سراحهم.
The ultimate goal is to release them for sure, but at least right now is create kind of a protective cover that will enhance the situation or improve their living conditions inside their cells.
فاللي أنا كنت حريصة عليه في خلال مدة السجن أو خلال جلسات التحقيق اللي كانت بتحصل، إني أتكلم عن العنف والتجديد اللي كنت بتعرض له داخل السجن علشان ما يحصلش للسيدات تاني.
During her own imprisonment time, she was keen on spreading the word about the type of violence and violation that she herself are suffering from inside jail, so this will not be repeated or other people wouldn't suffer from the same level of repression.
واللي بنحاول نعمله دلوقتي إنه نستغل كل دقيقة إحنا موجودين فيها بره بكل الإمكانيات المتاحة، إنه نتكلم عن ظروف السيدات داخل السجن، الوقف العنف، وقف التحرش، وقف انتهاك حرمتهم، لأنه في النهاية فكرة سجن ستات أو صحفيات أو مدافعات هي فكرة بالأساس مش مقبولة، ولكن ده أمر واقع مضطرين نتعامل معاه، فبنحاول قدر المستطاع تحسين الظروف.
Okay. What she's trying to do right now is
استغلال كل الفرص
using all the
possible means
and opportunities that she can get in order to improve the situation, in order to bring the voice of women behind bars to outside bars, and to try to
تحسين أوضاعهم،
improve their conditions.
أو رفع الوعي بإنه في تنكيل بيحصل، فعدم السكوت عليه هو اللي بيقدر يغير.
Or leading campaigns and
raising awareness
to create solidarity actions that would help women behind bars, political activists, or even like regular prisoners, because the situation of regular prisoners in Egypt also, especially women, they're suffering from different level of violations for their daily life.
I think your question was also about regulations, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
can you repeat the question? Maybe I can.
Yeah. So she's asking what kind of regulations are possible right now to help raise this kind of awareness or to help women, right? And to stop the violence happening. Yeah. So
I will shortly answer your question. I will get back to this in a minute, but we have regulations in Egypt regarding cybercrimes. We have regulations against violence against women, and they are used sometimes, but they have some gaps many organizations has led campaigns. They drafted new bills, refined bills that has more refined articles that will help women, but so far the parliament didn't pass them because I think it's kind of a intentionally used by the regime, this kind of vague articles that they can manipulate anytime to put people in prison or release people from prison. They put people behind bars because defying the Egyptian society values and principles. And when you ask them to actually define what are the values or principles, and then we can ask people to follow them, they don't, because there is nothing called actually societal values and principles. It's a very big thing. But regarding the social media corporations, I remember in 2017, 19, I was in a conference and the lady was saying, if Facebook is the biggest populated entity in the world and it doesn't have a democratic government. This is scary. This is really scary. Social media corporations, they're out of touch. We can see what Elon Musk has done with Twitter lately. There's no key regulations that you can put on them, but you can lead campaigns. Right now, a lot of organizations are leading advocacy campaigns, trying to put a more refined community guidelines, a more refined code of conduct for social media corporations so they can help limit the way that they are suppressing voices. Elon Musk is removing tags and verification out of the people whom he doesn't like. We have recently even a very clear example was a journalist used to work with BBC, and now she's a very well-known journalist. And now she left BBC. She will have her own like plans and projects. So Twitter removed the verification out of her account because they don't think that they should keep it anymore. Still, she is threatened, she is still targeted, she's still under the same oppression. But the social media companies think that as long as you don't work for something big like BBC, CNN, whatever, you don't need the verification. I think there is an overall phenomena, or maybe an awareness rising with the need to discuss digital rights, discuss how social media companies are operating. I know that in the US there has been several hearing sessions for Mark Zuckerberg and other people about what's happening on their platforms, but there is nothing conclusive, I would say, in the MENA region so far.
Let me add a little bit to that. I would like to warn very much of regulating social media platforms only because they are intermediaries. They should be just intermediaries. And should they be held liable or not, this is a whole different story and a whole different day that we can talk about this. But I would warn very, very strongly against putting regulations for intermediaries like Facebook or content providers. So, I mean, they're just hosting it. How much regulation can we put? Because once we start putting regulation, authoritarian countries like ours are going to say, okay, take this down, put this up, keep this. So I would, even with in fact, because of opposing views and because of critical views, I would warn that we should not regulate except minimally. It was working fine. When people started meddling with it, it started going downhill. So I just want to put this out there, and we can talk about this some other time. Is that okay? Anybody have any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Marina, and I am from Source Association. experience at JOSA dealing with cases of violence against women activists in Jordan, we have come to a conclusion that capacity building for women activists and journalists in Jordan is crucial. We want to better protect them and help them protect their devices and themselves. So we have started capacity building sessions on how to stay anonymous, how to use a VPN, and how to build your own VPN if it is blocked in Jordan. Like, my question is, are you aware of any initiatives like that in Egypt with journalists and activists, especially? Because we know that consequences for women in the Arab region is more dangerous and can even lead to death in some honor killings.
Yeah, there are, and I have to tell you, virtual activism actually was one of the very first ones that did this. I'm not advertising my organization. I'm just saying that we actually did capacity raising and training to nonprofit organizations and human rights defenders, and that was 20 years ago. But I think there are some now. I am involved in some that we can't do it in Egypt. So we do it outside of Egypt. And if anybody has to fly from Egypt, they have to fly separately. And I mean, it's a whole story. So in the case of Egypt, it's not that easy. But there are training, and I think there is a big need for training and for awareness raising and for technical training. I mean, the technical aspect of it is so important because you want people to be safe when, especially human rights defenders, when they are online. And a lot of people don't understand what safety means or what privacy means or which software to use or what the heck is a VPN and which VPN is uses proper encryption and which app works and which link I should click on. A lot of people don't know that. And so this is, of course, something that we all need to do with everybody, not just Egyptian activists.
We have VPN websites are blocked. So
yeah,
we have like websites are plugged. So
that's
even if
true.
you train people to use VPN and other sources, the websites itself is plugged. So we're a real authoritarian regime. So there's different layers of it. Jordan is a, I wouldn't say like full moon, like good thing, but it's a more authoritarian regime than ours. So, but yes, there are a lot, and a lot of Egyptian activists are using these techniques, and
Yeah.
we're trying, but
Yeah.
still, we are evolving, and the regime is evolving with us in a way.
Okay. Yes, they always evolve with us.
Not in a good way.
So thank you very much for attending. And we're around. If you have any questions, I will post on our page. I'm going to post some contact information. If you want to contact and stay in contact with any of us, we'd be delighted. So thank you very much.
Thank you.